So the story goes of a father that had two daughters, and one of the daughters was more beautiful than the other. The other daughter was described as almost homely. And both of these daughters were at the age where they were ready to be married. And there was a gentleman that grew up with them and was interested in taking one of their daughter's hands in marriage. And the story goes that the price of the daughter's hand was typically the gift of a cow. And depending on how many cows you brought, almost showed your seriousness and the worth that you had for the woman. And this was typically somewhere between 1 and 3 cows was normal. And the gentleman wanted to take one of the girls in marriage. And off in the distance, they see him coming. And he has 10 cows, way beyond the number that was normal. And the girls and the father see him approaching. And he comes up to them, and they're both excited about their potential future. And to everyone's surprise, the gentleman picks the homely woman, and she is ecstatic. Can't believe that she's chosen over her beautiful sister. And they go off, start their family, and soon after they come back and visit the family and the townspeople. And the homely girl has a radiance about her. And everyone's talking about how beautiful she is and how she is carrying herself. And the story goes that what ended up happening was she became that 10-cow wife. The value and the love that this gentleman had for this woman helped raise her up to this new level. And she became what they call the 10-cow wife. Beautiful story of just how when someone's valued, their lives can change, and you almost rise up to that standard that someone has for you. So we're here in the final days of Jesus' life, and we're actually going to be talking about the crucifixion today. And Jesus takes his disciples to a familiar place that's called the Garden of Gethsemane. You may have heard that term in the past. And it was a familiar place for them. It was kind of like a hangout spot, you know. Like if you and your friends growing up kind of had your spot, or even you and your family kind of had that spot that you would go, you know, maybe for a picnic, or, you know, it could be the beach or something like that. The Garden of Gethsemane was Jesus and his friends' spot that they would kind of retreat to and just, you know, be refreshed. And he's there with his disciples, and he steps away. They say that he walked away. They describe it as a stone's throw away. So he separates himself from the group. And as he's separated, this deep grief comes over him, like profound. We're not sure if what it was it was probably a stress, because he knew what was coming next. Jesus was aware of the fact that he was going to die. This wasn't a secret. He had actually told his disciples multiple times that his time was coming. We talked about that even in our last video. He knows his time is coming, and it's at hand, like at hand. And he's actually sweats drops of blood. So the stress and the grief and the everything was just the weight of the world on his shoulders, just knowing what's going to happen next. I mean, crucifixion and that type of thing was something to be feared. I actually went online and looked at to see if there's any accounts of anybody sweating drops of blood. I just wanted to know for myself. And there's, in this research that I was checking out, there was actually 6 accounts in this particular, there's probably more that has happened, but there was 6 specific accounts of people sweating drops of blood. And ironically enough, they were all people that were about to be executed. So people that were on like death row and knew that their time was coming, and I can only imagine the stress of knowing that. But 6 of the accounts, there were other accounts too that were more peripheral, but they're all stress related. It's all this intense, they call it intense physical or emotional stress that brings on this sweating of blood. But just a note that I found it ironic in some ways, Jesus knowing that he's going to die, this kind of like falls in line with that. And as he's praying, and he's separated from his group, and suddenly, and it's at nighttime, and suddenly Roman guards and the Pharisees come in to the garden area, and they have lanterns and weapons. And Jesus gets up and rejoins his disciples and the guards, and with their torches and weapons. And he says, "Who are you looking for?" And they say, "Jesus of Nazareth." And he says, "I am he." And there's this interesting part of the story that, just a little detail that they give. And the detail is that when he said, "I am he," the soldiers drew back and fell backwards. And I love it because it just shows that Jesus was in control. He had the power to kick some butt if he needed to, or do whatever it took to avert this from happening. But just the fact that just his words, the strength of his words, "I am he," and then they fall back. And they get their composure again. And he says it once again, "Who are you looking for?" And then he says, "I am he." And he says to the guards, he said, if it's me that you're looking for, then let them go. And they take Jesus, they let his disciples go, and they bring him to trial. Okay, they bring him back to where all of the trials and big decisions are made for criminals. So while they're there, I really don't want to get too much into the details of the goriness of everything. So, but ultimately, while they're there, he, first of all, is mocked before his accusers. They put a blindfold over his head, right? And then they have these sticks. It's probably some type of torture device or whatever it is, something that they would use. It was a common weapon that they would use. And they're actually taking turns hitting him on the head blindfolded, mocking and saying, if you are the Christ, tell us who it was that hit. They go on to spit in his face and pull out his beard and give him a whipping, like lashing with a whip. And you've probably seen some of the, if you've seen The Passion of the Christ, that movie, or just seen some pictures of Jesus's back that have been depicted in art and so on, you know that whipping was intense. They say that before they even crucified him, he was so weak that there wasn't much left. So he was so much so that when he was bringing his cross, they made you carry the cross up to this hill. And on the hill is where they were crucified. And he was so weak that they had to have someone else. They forced someone that was on the path to carry his cross up for him. And then ultimately he's crucified. I don't really want to dwell too much on the gory details. What I found interesting about this whole account, though, is Jesus' lack of words. Jesus stays silent throughout all of this. Jesus doesn't defend himself. He doesn't fight it. He doesn't come up with a defense. And I think these are all telling things, I know that probably for some it's hard to believe that he knew that this was going to happen beforehand. But he had something greater that he was looking to. It says in the Bible that he died for the sins of mankind. And I feel like that quietness, that subduedness, they say that it was like a lamb being led to the slaughter, that he was silent. You may have heard that term used in the past. And he was quiet, and I think this is telling because ultimately he was looking death in the face and saying, bring on your worst, because I have somebody in mind. And that somebody was me and you. Interesting enough, there's two other people that are hung on the cross that same day as him. They were both thieves. And one of the thieves were mocking him. And the other thief actually comes to Jesus' defense. And he said, why are you mocking an innocent man? He did no wrong. And interestingly enough, Jesus looks at him and he says to the man, the thief, his compadre on the crosses, today you will be with me in paradise. So it's just interesting that Jesus' story was about forgiveness. His life was about forgiveness. as a Christian myself, this might not be what you always see, guys, and I'm sorry about this, but a Christian's life should mimic that of Jesus and be about forgiveness. If we're not that way, you can have some questions, and that's okay. You can question that one. But we're all on a journey, and we're all getting better by the day. And then ultimately, there's even a guard. The guards and the people that are there crucifying him. They're all around him. He's up on the cross, and he's looking down at the people that crucify him. And his final words were, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Profound. Father, forgive them. The people that just put me on the cross, smacked me in the head, spit on me, put this crown of thorns. Forgive them. They know not what they do. And I feel that those same words ring true to this very day. And that same token is given to us. Those words still ring true. They're still available for us. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. And that's a beautiful thing. The girl in the beginning of the story, that was the homelier one. She was probably surprised that she was the one that was chosen, right? And that same surprise comes to each one of us. I mean, I gotta be honest. I was surprised that when I finally reached out in faith, that this gift was for me as well. And that value Jesus paid with his life. And because of that value that I've been given, like, this is why a lot of times our lives are changed once we have an encounter, because we realize the sacrifice. And just like that girl that was given her hand into marriage, that she became something when she was valued. That same gift, when we receive it, helps us become something more. My final thought on this is, I find it interesting the position that Jesus' hands are in when he dies on the cross. And I want you to start thinking about this more when you see a cross and you see Jesus' hands spread out, because those hands aren't just spread out in pain. This is the same position of an embrace. And that embrace, those arms are always welcoming. Jesus comes with arms wide open, arms stretched wide. And he's saying, come in. Come in. So Jesus dies. He breathes his last. And there's a Roman soldier there that says that he was part of the group. And once he sees all these interactions, he breaks down and he's like, surely this was the Christ. So right up until that final breath, people's hearts were being moved and decisions were being made. So that isn't the end of the story. The story goes on that there's a rising from the dead. And we talked last week about the gift, the helper that's given, the Holy Spirit. We talked about the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. next week when we meet for possibly the last time, in this series at least. We're going to talk about when Jesus rises from the dead. We're going to see what happens when that gift of the helper is given and lives are changed, never to be the same again. So we look forward to seeing you guys next week. It's going to be a great conclusion to the story, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you. Have a great day.